Do you still visit a classroom to learn new skills? Not anymore. Quick Start now offers a virtual classroom which allows you to interact with live instructors and students to grow your knowledge, skill set, and practical experience through a remote connection. This means you can now get trained from any part of the world. Our seasoned instructors have the experience and practical exposure to provide you with the knowledge, live examples, personal experiences, and tips to help you learn and master new skills.
Hi, thanks for taking the time to watch this. I'd like to give you an idea of what's in the 20767B class, Administering a SQL Data Warehouse. So my name is Jeff Rathjen. I'm the Senior Principal Instructor here at Quick Start, and I teach exclusively SQL Server. That's pretty much all I do. So this is a class that I teach. I have been working with SQL Server since it became a product back in the late 80s and have been working with it and in love with it ever since. I really enjoy working with and teaching you about SQL Server. My expectations for this course are simple. If you come in and take this class from me, I will expect that when you walk out of here on the last day of class, you can say to yourself, I've learned everything that I came in here to learn. I learned some things I didn't even know that I needed to know, and I didn't waste any time. If I can accomplish that, that's what I'm really hoping for out of class. Now, of course, when we teach this class normally, I would at this point ask each of the students to introduce themselves, because I want to hear what each student is looking for, what it is they're hoping to get out of the class, what they do and don't know, so I don't waste their time teaching them things they do know already, but also finding out what it is they're hoping to learn. As far as your book is concerned, we use a digital courseware from a company called SkillPipe, and that book, the big advantage to it is that it's yours permanently and it's portable. I can take notes in my book and transfer them to your book as a student. And so all the notes that I put into my book are yours, and you can see what I put in there. And if you choose to, you can share your notes with the other students in your class. It makes for a great way to share knowledge. And so the electronic books are a much better way to learn. On the other hand, if you don't like that, if you still insist that you want a paper book, you can print it out. It's easy to do, and when we start class, I'll show you how to do that. But all of your material can be printed out if you wanted it to. Now let's talk about what's in the class itself. There are 14 modules to this class. Normally, we don't get through the 14th module. I'll explain when we get there. Module 1 is an introduction to data warehousing. What does it mean to have a data warehouse? Why do we have them? What do we do with them? What are some common workloads for a data warehouse? In Module 2, we're going to talk about planning your data warehouse infrastructure, primarily your hardware. So what do we need to do in terms of memory and CPU and disk space, etc.? So often that just becomes kind of three guesses and hope you got it right. But we're going to talk about how to calculate really what you need, giving yourself room to grow. We'll talk about everything from network and memory cards, or network cards and memory, to CPU, disk space, all that kind of stuff. In Module 3, we'll talk about designing your data warehouse. So we're going to talk about star schemas and snowflake schemas. We're going to talk about fact tables and dimension tables and measures and hierarchies and on and on and on and on. And if those terms don't sound familiar to you, or if they kind of frighten you a little bit, that's why you're coming to class. You're going to learn about those things, and you'll learn what it is and why you would use those and how to use those. In Module 4, we're going to talk about column store indexes. Microsoft in recent times has given us column store indexes, and they're a great way for us to radically improve the performance of reading data, which is almost all that you do in a data warehouse. Module 5, we're going to talk about taking that whole concept and how you can put that as a cloud-based solution. So we'll talk about how to use a data warehouse and how to create a data warehouse that exists in the cloud in Azure. So that will be what Module 5 is. Module 6 is that we're going to start talking about SSIS, SQL Server Integration Services. And we're going to talk a lot of our modules about it because it is the tool by which we're going to load data into our data warehouse. So it's great that we've got our data warehouse, the hardware set up, we've got the server installed, we've got the database created, we've got our fact tables, dimension tables, all that stuff ready to go. We got to put some data in there. And then guess what? We've got to continue to put data in there as it changes. So the tool we're going to talk about using is SQL Integration Services, or SSIS. So in Module 6, we'll talk about creating an ETL solution, ETL or extract, transform, load, if that term isn't familiar to you. We'll talk about using ETL processes to start loading our data. Module 7, we're still talking about SSIS, and we're talking about, rather than the ETL solutions, or what is commonly called the data flow portion of SSIS, we'll be talking about the control flow, kind of the big picture, and we'll talk about how that works and what to do with it. Module 8, we'll talk about troubleshooting. So we'll talk about what happens when you've got a glitch in your SSIS package and you don't know what it is. How do you find that out? And we'll talk about debugging and troubleshooting. In Module 9, we're going to talk about wrapping all of that information together. All of the stuff we've learned about ETL and control flow, all of the SQL Integration Services information, and how do you actually start to extract data from my source data. So my source data might be sitting out in a unknown access database somewhere, or an Excel spreadsheet, or another SQL server, or an Oracle machine, or who knows what. So how do you begin to extract data from those sources and write them into your warehouse? And what do you do about inserts, updates, and deletes in my source data? How do we deal with those? How do we deal with things that change but not very often, and a lot of those kinds of things? So we'll be talking about that in Module 9. In Modules 10 and 11, we'll take a bit of a break. We'll take an aside. And in Module 10, we're going to talk about data quality services. And 11, we'll talk about master data services. In one sense, they kind of sound the same. And the more you get into them, at first blush anyway, the more you're convinced they are the same. They're both having to do with data integrity. But data quality services deals with two things: data cleansing and data deduplication. Data cleansing, we simply mean the ability to take our data and make sure that it's conformed to certain standards. The example I use in the book is that we have all of our 50 states in the United States, and do we want to see them abbreviated? For instance, Oregon. Is Oregon supposed to be abbreviated OR, or is it ORE period, or is it supposed to be spelled out, Oregon? That's the kind of thing we're talking about with data quality services, making sure that our data conforms to standards. And then deduplication, making sure we don't have duplicate records. Master data services, on the other hand, while similar, is different. Master data services allows us to ensure that our data reflects reality, the truth. So if it says that our customer is named Ben Smith and he lives, his work address is such and such, that really is true, that's accurate. And that's master data services. Moving on, in Module 12, we're going to come back to SQL Server Integration Services. And in Module 12, we're going to talk about how to extend it when there are things that you want to do in SSIS that it can't do. Well, we've got a couple of options. One we'll talk about, and that is writing scripts. And two, downloading or creating our own tasks. So there are some options and possibilities for extending SSIS that way. And then finally, in Module 13, we'll talk about how to deploy this. So now that we've got our SSIS package all created, it's tested, it does the ETL stuff that we need it to do, everything is good, we're ready to go. how do I get that to sit out on a server somewhere and actually run on a regular scheduled basis so that I don't have to come in it every night at midnight and click start. So we'll talk about deploying our package. Now module 14, consuming data in a data warehouse, is kind of changing gears completely. Everything for the first 13 modules has been how you as a DBA or a BI analyst or a data warehouse person, whoever, gets the data, creates a data warehouse, gets the data, and puts it into the data warehouse. In Module 14, it's a complete change of gears. Module 14 is about how do you use applications like Power BI and Power Pivot and Excel and some of those kinds of things to go read those that data out of your data warehouse. Generally speaking, I find when I teach this class, I don't have time to do Module 14. We just simply run out of time in the week. And of all the modules, it's the one that's easiest for you to pick up on your own. Now, of course, if we do have time in the class, we'll take time and look at that. But it's the one module that most likely we can just plan on studying that on your own after the class is over. So I hope that gives you a good idea of what the 20767 data warehousing class is all about. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to get in touch with your sales rep, and they'll be glad to either answer your question, or if they can't, they'll get me involved and I'll be glad to help you with it. So thanks for paying attention and listening, and I hope to see you again in class sometime.
To learn more about this course, review the course outline on quickstart.com and click the hyperlink modules to view the module recordings.